Hello and welcome to the show, everybody. I'm your host, Jack Canfield, and my next guest is Dr. Virgie Bright-Ellington, who is an internal medicine physician, a health insurance executive, and a medical billing expert. And she's dedicated herself to helping others protect themselves from lifelong debt and bankruptcy. In fact, I just saw a show recently where someone got a bill for being in the hospital for months with COVID for $4 million. You can imagine what that would do to you. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So Virgie is the author of What Your Doctor Wants You to Know to Save Your Financial Life, protecting yourself from being one medical bill away from bankruptcy, and another book called What Your Doctor Wants You to Know but Doesn't Have Time to Tell You. So welcome to the show, Virgie.
Thanks, Jack, so much for having me. Much appreciated.
Well, thank you for what you do. I just had mentioned in the introduction that I'd watched this PBS special about medical billing and $4 million hospital bill. Oh my God. So
if you weren't sick before, you're definitely sick after you get that bill.
I guess.
They'll lay you out. Yeah.
So I'm curious though, you're a physician. What inspired you to write a book about medical billing?
So yeah, I've been a board certified internal medicine physician for more than 20 years, a healthcare insurance executive for more than 10 years. But it wasn't until I was a cancer survivor that I found out that the number one cause of bankruptcy in the United States are medical bills. That most Americans, even those with health insurance, or they think they have good health insurance, just as much of those folks without health insurance are one accident or one serious illness away from debt for their lives, the rest of their lives, or even bankruptcy, unfortunately. And, it shouldn't be that way, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I commit myself to teaching folks how to make sure it doesn't happen to them.
So you've written this book. What do you hope, obviously you want people to not go bankrupt, but what do you hope readers will get from reading your book? What do you hope take away from your book? What's in there that's going to be of value for them? You know what?
I want folks to be empowered, to come away empowered. I want folks to feel like they're not helpless. That they don't have to submit to the American medical billing system, and that they can take back their lives. So, my book, I think, is very much like any other self-help book, Jack. With the beginning of we pick up a self-help book, and to the end, at the end of reading the book, we want to be transformed. We want to be better than we were before, figure out how to do better or be better. And even though, the Chicken Soup of the Soul series and my series, What Your Doctor Wants You to Know series, they're different topics, but we want the same transformation for our readers, right?
Right. So I know one of the things that in your book, because I've read it, is that you talk about often hospital bills are inaccurate. They've made mistakes. Tell us a little more about what people can learn. What can they do? And give us an example maybe of someone that the information in your book has helped.
Yeah, so actually there's many statistics, but the one that keeps coming up over and over again is that 80% of medical bills are inaccurate. They have mistakes in them. So a great example, and it's not just hospital bills from ambulance services, bills from doctors' practices. I think that happens less often, most often hospitals and ambulance services. But a great example of that is a few years ago, a friend of mine reached out to me. This friend is a single mom of two teenagers, one of who's in college, and her daughter is a type 1 diabetic. And her daughter became very seriously ill with the dreaded complication of type 1 diabetes, which is called diabetic ketoacidosis, or DKA for short. So her daughter got very, very sick. They recognized that something was very wrong, the symptoms, and they rushed her to the nearest emergency room that they could get to, that was closest to their home. So when they got her there, they stabilized her at that emergency room, but she needed to be admitted to a pediatric intensive care unit, which that facility didn't have. And the nearest one was about 10 miles away. So they had to call an ambulance service, a medical transport service, to transport her from the emergency room where they took her and stabilized her to the place where she really needed her care. No problem. She was in the ICU for a week. She did well, thank goodness. They told her, you know what, if you had waited, a few more hours longer, your outcome would have been, would not have been as great. So thank goodness. We think everything's all wrapped up. She comes home a week later. My friend gets what's called EOBs, explanation of benefits from her insurance, which means these are forms or notices of what the hospital and doctors have billed their insurance and what your insurance pays. So she had gotten these EOBs saying that the insurance paid the hospital bill, no problem. The doctors groups that saw her, that was paid, no problem. And life is good, right? A year later, she gets a bill for almost $3,000 from the ambulance service, the medical transport company that took her daughter from the first emergency room to the facility with the ICU. And she says, Virgie, can you help me? Can you take a look at this, and figure out, what happened and why the insurance isn't paying this? So I took a look at it. And the first thing I noticed is the code, which described the reason why the service was given, said, plug it into, Google the code, which is basically a price tag for the service that was provided. I put it in, Google it, and the code is for non-emergency transport. So no insurance company in the world is going to pay for a fancy, very expensive cush ride to just a medical visit for a routine checkup, right? They're not going to pay ever for non-emergent ambulance transportation. So I explained this to my friend, and the friend reached out to the ambulance service company and said, look, this was very much emergent. It was an emergent transport, very much so. And she told me that the ambulance service profusely apologized and said, oh, just disregard the bill, just disregard it. And she never heard from them again, saving herself almost $3,000 at a time when this single mom trying to put one kid through college actually had her hours cut back. She was already in debt. She was going to put this on a credit card and, adding to, or very likely contributing to some, significant, financial nightmare. So that is, what I do, an example of the mistakes that unfortunately happen in 80% of our medical bills.